Megan Fox, you are the first person to join us on Home Together today, Thursday. Megan Fox, I see you almost every day, so I want to take this opportunity to just say thank you. Mickey Gomez, thank you so much for joining today, Thursday. Home Together, we're still home together. Thank you all who have joined. So many of you have been here every day. I have to say, I'm super excited today to be speaking with Dr. Nicole LePera, aka the Holistic Psychologist. I follow her, I read what she posts almost daily, and I really think about what she posts daily. And she's been really helpful to me. I think everybody is on their own mental health journey. Everybody is dealing with this stay at home, this collective experience in a very individual way. And while we're all having this big collective experience, we're also having very individual experiences. So I'm really glad that she's going to be on today because she can talk to us about how we can heal ourselves, how we can perhaps go through this experience in a stronger way, in a more helpful way to all of us. And so I'm super excited that she's agreed to come on here. She's also writing a book. So I've suggested her to the Today Show. I really want to interview her more and talk to her more. So I think she's really found a niche, and I think she's really helping a lot of people. Speaking of a lot of people, hi Gray Author, hi Love and Stuff 22. I want to thank all of you who join here all the time. You're so great. I don't know how to make this thing. I don't know how to make it go down. It's oh, there, I just did it. Anya Banks, thank you. Bam Reedy, thank you. Mary Rubalcava, thank you so much for joining. Aaron 2020. I was just writing for the Sunday paper. Who would have thought 2020 would be going quite like this? I don't think any of us at the beginning of the year, when we thought about 2020, we would have imagined ourselves staying at home. We would have imagined ourselves filing for unemployment. We would have imagined ourselves standing in food lines. We wouldn't have imagined ourselves doing any of those things. Oh, so how do I do that? Patrick sent me a request. So let's see. Now I add Patrick. This is all getting very technical. And so I'm waiting for Patrick, who is, there's Patrick.
Hi.
Hi, Patrick. Are you going to join us on Home Together today? Because we're talking with the holistic psychologist about mental health.
Oh yeah, I'm coming right now. I can't wait to talk with her and get some insights.
Yes, I think your girlfriend Abby Champion said that she and a lot of her friends listen and follow the holistic psychologist, aka Dr. Nicole LePera, because she has such valuable advice. And one of the things I want to ask her is how we can get maybe more men to follow her. I don't know, maybe there are tons of men who follow her. Oh, David.
Right. Well, I'm going to come out right now and we'll talk with her.
Oh, good. And you'll bring the people who follow you, because the
Maybe.
people who follow you are probably different than the people who join us here on mariashriver.com. But anyway, this is not mariashriver.com. This is Maria Shriver Instagram. So I've also added some light today, because I tried to explain to Patrick, at my age, you need light. At his age, you don't need light. At my age,
everybody can use some light. Light
Yes.
at the end of the tunnel.
Light at the end of the tunnel. And that's exactly what the holistic psychologist offers on a daily basis. She offers hope and light to all of us who feel at one point or another like we're in a tunnel. I remember a friend of mine said to me a couple of years ago, every single person has some mental health challenges. And I think there's always spectrums with everything, but I think this quarantining has brought out a lot of mental health issues for a lot of people: anxiety, old trauma, inner child work to come forward. When we talked to the doctor in the emergency room last week, he also mentioned that a lot of people coming in suicidal, depression. So I think mental health issues are front and center at this time, along with so many other issues. But that's why we thought it would be really helpful to have the holistic psychologist on. To talk to us all about what we can do, how we can navigate this time better.
Yep. No, I'm super excited because my girlfriend is a big fan. I've had other people message me that were excited that we're getting to talk with her.
Yes.
And you know, who couldn't need a little pep talk or advice? I mean, whether it's during, you know, Corona times or not, you know, your mindset and the psychology of everything is, you know, very impactful. And I'm looking forward to getting some tips from her.
Yes, and what I really like about her is she believes that everything we need relies inside of us already, and that we can self-heal. And she's built a movement of self-heal. There's 2.5 million people following her. So we could maybe learn something about that.
Yeah.
We could learn how to get a lot of people to follow us from holistic psychologists. So there's some people who are already suggesting questions in here, but we can see. Is she? She's already there. Dr. Nicole is already there. I thought we'd get on here just to like prep for her.
2 o'clock on the dot.
Hi.
I am punctual. Hello.
Mary, you were there at 1:59. We saw you.
I saw you go live. So hello to you both. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And I was just telling everybody that I'm a big fan of yours. I follow you every day. You give me something to think about. You give me things to journal about. And you're so helpful to so many people. So thank you for that incredible work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I was listening behind the scenes to both you and Patrick's very kind words about me and my work, and blushing all the while. So it is my honor to be chatting with you both and to hopefully connect with your community and share some tools that can be really helpful during what I know for a lot of us is a really unusual and often difficult time.
Yeah, so let's begin with that. You're talking about tools for this moment in time. What are you finding, Dr. Nicole, about this moment in time? What are people requesting from you? What do you think they need now that they didn't need 2 months ago?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I mean, maybe it is something new that is needed, but I think it's just things are being amplified or exacerbated. So some of the things that I think a lot of us are struggling with underlying, I talk a lot about an expanded version of trauma. I'm a big believer that we are all wounded in childhood, many different reasons why we carry those wounds into adulthood. I think those are being exacerbated right now. And then of course, there's the camp of us where our external lives do look different, where jobs aren't, available to us anymore. So that in and of itself can be activating in terms of our evolutionarily based response system, which is to keep us safe. And the short of it is very few of us are feeling safe these days. And a lot of us are having those older wounds reactivated on top of it. So what I'm hearing and seeing a lot in the collective is a lot of emotional activation, a lot of stress responses, and a lot of felt threat all over the place these days. That of course is impacting how we're living our day-to-day lives, how we're showing up in our relationships, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our future, and the list really goes on.
And what's your best advice for managing that? I know you talk a lot about journaling and writing down your experiences. If someone is experiencing all those emotions that you just talked about, what do you advise them to do if they don't have their job, if they've just lost their job, they don't know where the next paycheck is coming from?
Yeah, so just like you described my work very beautifully to begin with, I focus on empowering the individual because we can't control what's happening outside of us. And a lot of us can't control when and if our job will return. So there's a lot externally that we cannot change right now. So I'm really interested in empowering within. So when we're emotionally activated, with what becomes very important, the reason why I call myself holistic is I believe that we are a whole individual that, in my opinion, consists of a physical body with physiological, regulatory systems, hormones, all of that fun stuff, has a nervous system that helps us regulate our stress response. I believe that obviously we are a mind. A lot of us spend a lot of time in our minds thinking thoughts. We have, I call them narratives, right? We have stories about ourselves, our worlds. I believe that we are a spirit too. So I say that because when we're dysregulated, it's incredibly important. And again, when the environment is causing a dysregulation, it's really important to build in those daily practices that help us to reestablish a balance in ourselves. So things that I'm always talking about are the tools that we can regulate our body. I think that's what makes me a little bit different than some other, people, mental health individuals. I believe that we need to consider the body. So things like breath work, things like meditation, actual practices that can reestablish that balance. Because when our bodies are out of balance, we cannot manage our emotions all of that well. And then, of course, going up into our emotional and spiritual realms, incredibly important to find those practices that work for us, that help us soothe those more uncomfortable emotions. This is where it gets complicated, of course, because this is where a lot of us will observe ourselves falling into those older ways that we dealt with whatever it is, what ways that we dealt with sadness, ways that we dealt with grief, ways that we dealt with anger. A lot of us didn't learn healthy ways because we weren't modeled healthy ways to cope with our emotions. I'm one of those people. I had a very limited relationship with my emotions. I was so disconnected from them that it took me into adulthood to first reestablish that connection and then to figure out how to soothe these very complicated feelings. So a lot of us are finding us fall into those older patterns of coping that aren't always helpful, whether it's I'm numbing, I'm medicating, I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm tearing around the house, I'm discharging it outward. That's what is complicating things further for us. So in that realm, we really need to establish better practices, better ways to tolerate or to help soothe really complicated big feelings that a lot of us are experiencing.
Yeah.
So, of course, you talk about things that people can do personally to evolve during normal times and during times like this. But I think you said it perfectly, that there's a lot of stuff happening externally that we can't control. This virus, the lack of being able to go out to work, everything like that. But yet so many people do focus on that. It's hard not to. When am I going to get back to work? When can I go out for a walk? When can I go to the beach? When will my life be normal? All these things. So what's a tip for people to stop focusing on what they can't control? I know it sounds so much easier said than done.
Oh, incredibly. And I used to be that person. I say it, a lot of us look outside. So when work resumes, when I can have that daily walk at the beach, then I'll feel better. While that might be true, and probably largely is true for a lot of us because our incomes are affected, because, we're feeling stagnant, energy is stuck, that, in my opinion, can't be we are so disempowered if we have to wait for the world around us to change to feel better. Oftentimes, that I call it kind of that future-based prediction thinking, where we try to become, the clairvoyant that is wondering when or knowing when it's going to end, instead of living in our minds, as a lot of us live most of our day-to-day life, really learning how to ground our attention in the present moment. Because for a lot of us, it's those running narratives, those fears that it will never end, for instance, that cause us that discomfort. So it's really about toning what I call an attentional muscle, and learning how to remove the focus that a lot of us are living constantly in our mind and our stories, me included. I talk a lot about a history that I have had of dissociation, of being connected, of being so internally preoccupied by my thoughts that I'm not even present in my current moment. So the impact of really toning that muscle and learning how to catch yourself when you're going down that, what if it never ends path, or when will it end? And it's causing me stress. That's that connection. We can all, I'm sure, remember a time where if I thought a stressful thought long enough, I might be having a full stress reaction in my body. So the way to navigate that differently is to first notice that I'm lost in thought. I'm worrying about when this is going to end, even if rightfully so, acknowledge it, and then redirect my attention, whether we want to use our breath, what's available in our moment. Wait, what am I actually doing right now? Oh, I'm washing the dishes. Okay, let me just refocus my full attention. This sounds so simple, much harder, more difficult. But what I'm doing in that moment is I'm going from here, my mind, into my current reality in the moment. And that can relieve some of that extra stress that I'm causing myself.
And for people that don't fully understand or can't grasp the idea of focusing on their breath and the breathing techniques, I know you speak about that. For a lot of people, it's hard to understand how to control and to focus on your breath in meditation. I'm one of those people. And I think a lot of people I'm seeing on there, it's hard to concentrate on breathing when I have so much anxiety or this thing. Are there other ways that you start your morning, or you recommend people do in their days that can help them understand their, like you said, their intention for the day, or being in the now and focusing on what they really can develop?
Yeah, absolutely. So our senses, what we can hear, what we can see, even our moving body, yoga, right, is really impactful for a lot of us because it gives us a different focal point. The breath for a lot of us can feel elusive. So for some of us, like I said, it's okay, let me just focus on, let me ask myself, go through a checklist. What can I see? Okay, I'm seeing my room right now. What do I feel? I'm feeling the impact of my, my butt against the floor. Like, right, like focusing on senses can help ground us. When our body is moving, when we're doing something active, I use dishes example, taking a walk, that can be the hook for our attention. In terms of starting our day, I set an intention every morning to carve out first and foremost time for just me before I pick up my phone, before I, enter the day, maybe before some of us watch the news and get the latest report. Carving out just time where I'm with myself can go a long way, where I can set that intention. And that might be the space where I use maybe my senses to ground me. And that gives me a start point to jump off for my day that's different. A lot of us pick up the phone, right? If we see something stressful, now we might be starting our day into that stress spiral. Right. And morning and first of the day doesn't have to be early in the morning. It can be whenever our eyes open, but carving out even 5-10 minutes just for you and your own self, being in the moment can go a long way.
Dr. Nicole, I think it's, so many people need therapy and they find help on your page. So many people can't afford to go to a therapist. It's expensive for millions of people. And you've built this community of several million people online. First, does that surprise you? And two, what do you think people are getting from the community you've built?
Yeah, absolutely, Maria. So yes, when I came online last July, so a year and a half ago-ish, I had two main intentions. The first intention, I was working very traditionally. I had a private practice. I was doing straight talk therapy. Behind the scenes, I had my own, dark night of the soul, my own healing journey. I came to the awareness of all of these holistic tools. I thought they worked. I wanted to start to speak about them. So that was my one intention. I want to share my tools. I was actually a little bit concerned about what peers in the field, what my colleagues would think. So I didn't really have any idea of what the impact would be. My other intention was to create a community of individuals who I could relate to because I was finding my relationships were shifting. So I went online with little expectation. I viewed it first and foremost as an outlet for me and my new work that I was wanting to put out into the world. I was floored at how quickly the community began to build. I was fostering the community aspect because I felt that was very important. I feel like a lot of us are feeling disconnected and lonely, especially as we start to make some of these changes that go along with healing. It pulls us, our relationships shift. So that was a big part of it. I understand though now why it gained steam so quickly. So it shocked me is my simple answer, but I understand it now. I think I'm meeting the collective right where they're at. So many of us are feeling stuck. So many of us, aren't living the life that we feel on some level that we deserve, or maybe that we want to feel that we deserve. So I think that these things that I'm now talking about very globally are universal. So while I show up and I'm the vessel of the message, I think that we're all collectively struggling in very similar ways and now healing in very similar ways. So while I was very surprised, I didn't know what the trajectory would be. I think it's a kind of this unifying thing that so many of us all around the world now are experiencing.
Do you find that, since I'm the mom of 2 girls and 2 boys, do you find that men also come to your collective? Do they absorb the message in the same way as women?
Yeah, I think it's really universal, gender-wise, culturally. Like I said, there are community members from all around the world, and to be sharing the same language and the same experience, regardless of the gender, the culture. It is there and it is prevalent. I've been connecting with other people that have platforms that are much more male-based, so a lot of males have come in that way. Healing is for all of us, so I don't see distinctions, and that's what I think is so beautiful. It really is the kind of universal aspect of humanity, similar to, unfortunately, the kind of pandemic aspect that we're all sharing now. there's so many components of healing that we all get, no matter where you're living on the globe or what gender you're identifying with.
Speaking of men, I guess I saw one of your recent posts talking about egos, and I'm curious for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like a lot of people are struggling with egos right now, checking their egos, finding ways to refocus and shift their, a lot of the conversations we talk and deal with are in the business category. And a lot of people are having trouble reaching out for help. They don't want to seem like they're not doing great, or if their business isn't going well, they're worried about what other people will think of them, and their kind of their ego check to themselves. Can you talk about the idea of the ego?
Absolutely. The ego is something universal. We all have one. It's not a bad thing. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what this ego is, and a lot of misdirected efforts to kind of eradicate it or make it go away. What the ego is from my perspective, or what function it plays from my perspective, is a protective function. It developed very early on when most of us were in childhood, and it became kind of, I call it the story of us. It became a protection mechanism to keep ourselves in a zone of felt safety, right? So whether or not we are in a physically unsafe environment or an emotionally unsafe environment, and again, this doesn't have to just look like, in my opinion, what a lot of us are used to in terms of the big T of trauma. You don't have to check a box of abuse or neglect, as I didn't, to be feeling, I think, the impact of some of these aspects of our childhood. So I say that to say we all have an ego. It has a protective role. And when we feel threatened, and this is, again, the universal experience of this pandemic for most of us, we're all feeling threatened, some of us to a greater degree than another. So that's why, to speak to your point, Patrick, that you very eloquently are observing, our egos are getting activated, right? And all of these stories are coming up. Our egos are talking to us all day long. We have thoughts in our mind, whether or not we're tuned into them, all day long. And it tells us stories. It evaluates our world, how we're doing in it, what it means about us, right? All day long. Most of those stories are very ego driven. And when we are feeling threatened, that's a time where our ego loves to come, what it believes is to the rescue, right? And telling us all of these stories, what it believes to be doing is to keep us safe. I want to just acknowledge what safety is for the ego is nothing beyond familiar. It doesn't mean it's the right course of action. The ego-driven safety, that we might be doing, not reaching out for help, might actually not be keeping us safe, right? Reaching out for help might be the helpful thing to do. So safe really just means familiar, meaning the thing that we always do. So if you're someone who never reaches out for support and you're feeling like you need some support right now, you might have that ego voice telling you all the reasons not to, because reaching out would be unfamiliar and therefore deemed unsafe to the ego. So a lot of us are having the activation around our ego. All of us live and have that ego within us. And our goal, in my opinion, is not to remove the ego. I don't believe we can. It's to learn how to navigate it differently. So for instance, back to your example, Patrick, if I'm that person, I desperately need help. My ego tells me you'll be deemed, a lot of men probably have this message, weak if I ask for help, for instance, right? What navigating it differently to me means in that moment is showing up as the self that is not the ego, that observer that can watch that ego and that story, and deciding to reach out anyway. It might be uncomfortable as hell, and probably will be if you never did it before, but that's how we navigate the ego. So it doesn't mean it went away. It doesn't mean it's suddenly my cheerleader dialing the phone number to get me support. It just means I can be empowered. The self that is actually me, not that ego, not that part of me, I can show up and say, you know what? I'm going to call that friend. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to do something different this time.
I love in all your posts where you kind of name an issue that might be a mental health issue, but then you tell people there's nothing wrong with you. Mm-hmm. If you are experiencing, if your inner child is activated, if you feel like you have trauma, if your parents didn't pay attention, all of these things that we have kind of processed into there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with me. You name them and then say, actually, there's nothing wrong with you. And then you give us tools and how to work through it. I think one of the kind of hopeful things that and I'd love to end with this concept, is that we can come out of this collectively and individually more resilient, more aware than we went in. For many people, that's like, no, 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 no. Why do you believe that, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, stress, and this might, be counterintuitive, might be something we want to resist. Stress is necessary for the human. We need a little bit of stress. It's just a part of life. Stress isn't a bad thing. Of course, this pandemic is a greater degree of stress, but what resilience is, and we have, again, evolutionarily the inborn capacity to deal with stress. What ideally happens is a stressor comes. So even if it's a big one, like this pandemic, I deal with it, and then I go back to a baseline. What has been happening for a lot of us, for a lot of our lives, is we get stuck in that stress response. So I say that to say stress isn't bad. What becomes problematic is how our bodies and our nervous systems included, again, why I work holistically, what becomes problematic is when we don't get that bounce back, when we don't learn how to regulate. And again, a lot of this began in childhood, where we didn't have, when we are children, we are dependent in all ways on a caregiver. One of the ways we're dependent is to help regulate our nervous system. So if we didn't have that caregiver who had their own regulated nervous system, as I did not, as most of us did not, we fall into that dysregulated state very early. And for some of us, that carries with us. So stress isn't the problem. It's how do we cope with the stress? So when we come through something, even if it's as stressful as this pandemic is, we can actually develop a resilience, which goes a long way, because I have a lot of parents. I myself am not a parent, but a lot of parents message me very concerned at times with wanting to make sure that they don't mess up their kids in any way. My response is always the same. That's impossible and not a bad thing to mess up your kids and to give them a little stress in their life. What they need is to make sure that they're resilient and they can deal with it, because there's something to be said too about a completely protected, very well-intentioned, let me put my kid in a bubble and make sure they're never stressed. I don't think that is always the most helpful response either. So a little stress, learning how to regulate our nervous system so that we can cope with the stress more successfully than maybe we have historically, will go a long way in developing the resilience that I believe, another kind of epidemic, as I call it, most of us as adults have very little resilience, very little emotional resilience, again, because we weren't modeled it. So now as an adult, we have to empower ourselves and teach ourselves how to develop that resilience.
Well, thank you so much for blessing us with your wisdom and giving some tips and tools and advice to everybody. Where can people kind of learn more about you? Obviously through your social media page.
Wait, I want to ask you, because I read that you've got a book coming out. Is that true?
Well, there we go.
Or you have a book?
Yes. So 2 exciting things. I'm doing a whole lot of writing these days because we're anticipating a spring 2021 release date of my first book, which is super exciting. Thank you. And again,
for the Today Show.
I love it. That's great. And honestly, I thank the community. I thank everyone, because I know that this book has been really supported all along the way, and it's possible now because of the readiness of the collective. So anyone can find me at the.holistic.psychologist. Instagram, I have a link tree with all sorts of goodies on there, and you'll hear me talking about, because this time next Friday, May 1st, I'm actually opening enrollment to my online virtual membership, where we as a community walk through healing journey together. So anyone who's interested, I always just shout out my Instagram, because it really is the hub. Everything can be found in the link tree. So the.holistic.psychologist.
So people can sign up for that course starting next Friday. Is that it?
So starting next Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the enrollment will open, and members will come in and we'll start healing together. The founding members, I think we launched in November. So we've been working hard as a group to tailor it, and now it's ready to go. So we're very excited to let a whole new round of self-healers into the circle.
And I think what's so great about you is that these skills that you kind of encourage us all to have, how they benefit us, whether we're a parent, whether you're in a relationship, so whether you're communicating with a partner, you're going to be a better partner if you can regulate yourself, understand yourself. You're going to be a better sister, a better mother, a better individual if you have the tools to help you navigate this journey called life.
Yeah. And you're going to be better to yourself, because we are often the most critical about ourselves.
Yes. That is very true. So,
Well, thank you so much. We
thank you,
appreciate
Dr.
it. Can't wait
Nicole.
to read the book when it's out
Thank
next
you
year.
both. Thank you both so much. And you both stay safe.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. So she's terrific. She's doing really extraordinary work on her page with her voice. I love that she had no idea what was going to meet her. She just went on Instagram and started speaking her truth, and that's why I
And
always
grew a following very, very fast. I mean, a year
Very
and a
fast,
half or
yeah.
whatever that was. But that goes back to the idea of just content is really king. When you're putting out great information, great content, when you're really talented like she is with her words and how she's able to articulate what people are going through, and talking about relationships and mental health and ways to navigate these times, it makes sense why she's blowing up so much.
Yeah. And I follow her a lot. And I think that, you know, for many people my age, we did not grow up with any of this awareness. We did not grow up thinking about mental health. We did not hear words about boundaries, or we did not hear anything.
Right.
Anything.
By the way, we didn't even say, a lot of people are wondering who I am.
No, they're not.
Yes.
They are. This is Patrick Schwarzenegger.
I'm Patrick.
Thank you, Maria and Patrick.
Well, those are probably some people that have followed
Oh,
us.
Maria and Patrick, I love that you're always giving and loving. This is my favorite interview yet.
This wasn't great.
Yeah, so everybody knows who you
Well,
are.
no, we have
Let me
other
introduce
people.
myself.
People don't know who you are.
Oh God, okay. Well, guess we're here because of her. They're here because of.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, so I'm Maria Shriver. Who are you?
I'm Patrick Schwarzenegger.
Okay, so maybe they all know who she is and they don't know who we are.
I don't know, maybe.
Well, we're not. We're the holistic interviewers.
Yeah.
We're holistic mother and son.
We need holistic help.
We need it. We definitely. I found her really helpful. And so I want to thank all of you for joining us on Home Together. We do these interviews every day at the same time. And hot Patrick. Yes.
And tomorrow
Yeah,
we have Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban. He'll be on my Instagram at Patrick Schwarzenegger. And I can't wait to talk with him about business, about the economy right now, about how his businesses are shifting, about how he's finding ways to give back and use his voice and his platform to help out a lot of the small businesses and employees. So I know a lot of you guys have been recommending us to talk with Mark Cuban. So we're super excited to talk with him tomorrow. Again, that's on my Instagram page at Patrick Schwarzenegger. And 2 p.m. tomorrow. I can't wait. And hopefully you guys come and watch.
Yes. Who colored my hair? Vito Esposito.
Vito Esposito. That's a good name.
Vito Esposito. But I just
put
dry shampoo in it and root spray and all kinds of stuff. So this is a whole mixture of things going on here. But I'm also going to go over to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement account at 3:00 and talk to Dr. Mark Hyman about brain health, about women, about Alzheimer's prevention. So if you're interested in any of those subjects, I will see you at 3:00 West Coast time on the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. That's WHAM Now with Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a great friend and a great doctor and a great agent of change. Don't say end.
We will see you guys tomorrow, 2 p.m.
Okay.
Mark
All
Cuban.
Right. What
Come
root
back.
spray? People want to know the root
All right,
spray.
then you keep talking about your hair.
Okay.
My hair. No one's complimenting me on my hair.
No, he's had it. No, I'm only kidding. Anyway, we want to thank you. We want to thank the holistic psychologist so much for joining us. As I said, I'm a big fan of hers, and I think I'm a student of so much of what she's putting out there. I find it so helpful. Patrick has just left me. And I'm going to go over to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. I want to thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow with Mark Cuban on Patrick's Instagram account. I'm Maria Shriver. And that's Patrick Schwarzenegger. And we are still home together doing our part, trying to be of service to our country and to our state and do what we can to bring you joy, bring you tools that will help you. These are conversations with the helpers, the healers, and the cultivators of hope. We're all one of those kinds of people, and we want to thank you all for joining us. Wish we were on twice a day. Lord have mercy. I don't know about that. That's one of those accounts. But thank you guys so much for joining us. And WHAM is at 3 p.m., the Women's Alzheimer's Movement with Mark Hyman. Every Thursday, we have a different guest there to talk about women's health, brain health, and Alzheimer's prevention. That's my passion. Got to find a cure for Alzheimer's. We're on it. And so much good work going on from the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, which we're trying to bring attention to at this time. So God bless you all, and we'll see you later, or I'll see you at WAM. Bye. Patrick, do I press end now?